Hi everyone, welcome back to Moneymaker Mondays. This is episode 2, the Moss Street deal part 2. I hope you all enjoyed the first episode where we looked at the first half of this deal, which, just to recap, this one was an opportunity to acquire two properties, both adjoined, right next to each other, in the Keith area of Moray, towards the north of Scotland. Involved the purchase of a 4-bedroom mid-terrace house and a 1-bedroom end-terrace cottage. So last week we looked in detail at the opportunity involving the house, the various factors involved in terms of the refurb, how we came about the deal, the process of the acquisition, and ultimately, the key strategies as to how to make money through these acquisitions. So today we're going to look at the second part of that opportunity, which focuses in on the cottage. So same sort of structure as last week. I'm just going to give an overview as to how this deal came about, the kind of main potential pitfalls of this one, and we'll have a look at the refurbishment project in more detail, as well as fundamentally looking at two key strategies as to how we can make money through this one. So I'm just going to kick us off by reintroducing how the deal came about and just a bit more detail on the background of this one. So first of all, just to give you an overview of the opportunity that we have at hand here, this one involves a 1-bedroom end-terrace cottage, similar to the mid-terrace house involved in this deal. It also has an enclosed parking area to the rear, but as I kind of briefly explained in episode 1, there's a bit of crossover with regards to the title on this land. It is a kind of driving area stroke rear garden, but there's a shared access in order to provide access to the driveway for the mid-terrace house. This one sits on the end, and it does have a certain private section, and certainly on the title it's clear as to what belongs to the cottage and what belongs to the house. But like I said, there is just an area that is shared just to give free rein for the mid-terrace property to come and go. This one is also situated on that main road, sitting on the A9, which is the main road that travels through the town of Keith. Similar structure in terms of the mechanics of this property. There is no gas supply to this area, so in this row of properties, certainly it's all electric heating. In the previous property, the mid-terrace house, it was old electric storage heaters, so it was on the Economy 7 platform. The cottage, thankfully, doesn't have that system. However, it did have electric panel heating, and I think there was actually only about 2 radiators in the whole property. So that was one key element that had to be considered. The rest of the property needs absolutely full refurbishment. One of the kind of main things with this one, when we talk about the potential pitfalls, through the process of acquiring this one on behalf of our clients, looking at it, we were presented with 2 home reports, one for the house and then one for this cottage. And the description provided by the surveyor, which was the same surveyor that carried out the one on the house, everything was leaning towards the fact that this was residential. That everything else suggested there was in fact a home report, which only applies legally on residential properties. The single survey is structured the same way as if the surveyor was looking at a residential property, and it provided a current home report value of £35,000 on this one. But what was very interesting is, through a bit of extra due diligence and speaking to the local agent, a penny kind of dropped with me that there was weird shelving in the unit. The shower room didn't quite look correct. There was just something that was off-putting about it that didn't seem as though that this was a residential property. And speaking to the local agents, they made a kind of flippant comment regarding the fact that moons ago this used to be a shop, and we decided to explore this further with the local council. And it transpires just about a week before my clients were due to conclude on this, that we found out that the property was actually still commercial, and that no home report should have actually been carried out on this one. There was indeed planning approved and drawings and designs submitted to the council to allow for the conversion from commercial to residential. And albeit it used to be a shop a long time ago, the planning was only submitted last year for the actual conversion from commercial to residential. Now, it's not it wasn't a deal breaker because of the mechanics of the whole deal as overall. You know, when we were looking at both the house and the opportunity with this one. But what it did mean was that there were some external factors that would have to come into play. For example, any works that the clients go and do to this property now have to be approved and overseen by building control and by the local planning department within Moray Council. You know, they will require a building warrant and they'll require a sign off, as well as having to meet all of the residential regulations now, which have certainly changed and are constantly changing. So, you know, it basically boosted the costs of refurbishment on this one, because there's a lot more external factors to consider. Nonetheless, we took a view on that and we weighed up all the pros and cons, and we factored in the extra costs, and ultimately it was still very much a viable opportunity that the clients wanted to proceed with, because, like I said, this one was a case of you had to buy both to make it stack. So I'll discuss the potential exits for the cottage itself when we establish this information as we progress further on in the video. But yeah, just another key factor to focus on. Make sure you carry out detailed due diligence, and ensure your lawyer is also picking up on these things before you go and conclude, because it could eventually turn out to be something you didn't think it was. So in terms of the source and the background on this opportunity, I won't go into much detail on it this time around. If you want the full story, certainly check out episode 1. Like I said, these two were both bought as a package, but it was basically an inherited property. I think it was his son, his dad had left him these two properties to deal with. I think perhaps once upon a time he might have ran this cottage, you know, as a shop, and you know, that's certainly a long time ago. But this was also on the open market with a local estate agent with a home report, despite it being formerly a commercial property, and it was introduced by the same sourcer that's very active in the market at the moment. So, like I said, we by doing our correct due diligence and checking with the council and exploring this in full detail, we were still able to protect our clients and ensure that they were walking into this with eyes wide open, and ultimately, you know, plenty of scope still to make profit from this. So let's take a look at the numbers on this then, factoring in all the extra considerations we've had to give in terms of the commercial to residential conversion. So like I said to you at the beginning of episode 1, you know, this package deal was structured where the clients had paid a purchase price of £90,000 for both properties collectively. Now this one, for some odd reason, given the fact that it's actually commercial, did have a genuine, you know, accredited RICS chartered surveyor provide a home report. Now on this home report they valued the property at £35,000, which, you know, perhaps if they recognised it was commercial might have varied a little, but at the end of the day it's just a bit of a shell. Looking at comparables for any kind of single level one bedroom properties in the north of Scotland and in similar areas to Keith, there's certainly significant demand. So you can see where a value of a property in this condition would probably arrive around about the same level, sort of 35 to 40k. So you know, we were comfortable at that level despite it, you know, being valued incorrectly from a commercial to residential sort of purpose. But across the two, we discussed how we structured this one in terms of the ADS. Now, purchasing properties below 40 grand provides no demand for the additional dwelling supplement to be payable, but in order to look at the potential tax payable in terms of capital gains, or certainly trying to justify to any valuers in the future based on purchase price, I'd explained in episode 1 that we decided not to increase the purchase price significantly on the cottage to benefit the ADS on the house. Just too many factors in place that we need to kind of be a bit more honest about it, and just, you know, purchase them as to what their fair value would be. So on the cottage, the client had allocated a purchase price of £23,000. The legal fees were about £800 on this one as well, which is kind of standard conveyancing costs. ADS, like I said, because the 23 grand obviously falls below the £40,000 threshold, there was no additional dwelling supplement payable, which is always good. Sourcing fee, it was another £2,000 on this unit. A collective across the two opportunities was £4 grand. And given the external factors that added into this in terms of having to consider building warrants, probably getting an architect to oversee and review the conversion itself, albeit it's very straightforward. There's really not much you can do in this property. The layout of the shop stroke cottage is basically, it'll be an open plan kitchen lounge, quite a substantially sized shower room, and then one big double bedroom. And one of the kind of main factors in this is you're looking at how to best lay this property out when you carry out the conversion. And the bedroom has been factored in to be front facing. Now there's basically a front door and a rear door to the cottage. So when you step through the front door, you're essentially walking straight into your bedroom. So you might think that's a bit weird. I thought it was a bit strange that they had designed it that way as well, given the fact that the bedroom basically faces onto the main road. But it's the glazed units in the property, they're double glazing, they're actually UPVC double glazing, whereas the house was aluminium frame. But when you look at the property itself and you consider the rear room, you've also got a door that comes in from there, which is, when you actually look at these properties, because they sit in the main road, the natural use of it will be that you would go round to the back where you park your car and you would come in that door. Therefore, if you had your property at the back of the property, that's when you generally would be kind of walking into your bedroom. And for me, that's just like not normal practice. It's a bit odd to be kind of walking into your bedroom. So looking at the layout, it certainly makes sense to have the lounge, open plan lounge and kitchen to the rear of the property. So when you park your car, you come in that door and you'll be walking into your lounge and kitchen. You then have a kind of open hallway space with a large shower room to the left, coming out to the front of the property where you'll have your double bedroom. And the bedroom is certainly a good size. So there's not too much to play with in terms of this property. The kitchen design, trying to maintain the floor space, it's probably going to be a single walled kitchen that you would put in, with ground level units and wall mounted units with the hob, with your extractor fan and your hood, your hob, your sink, your basin, and everything else on a kind of single walled setup, so that you can maximise the floor space within the lounge, and the same with the shower room. One of the main factors actually to consider on this one with the shower room, that when we're looking at the refurb costs on it, the waste pipe that is designed in the current shower room has to be moved, and the pipes that they've got in the shower room at the moment, because it was an old commercial unit, they're just not going to suit the constant use. It can eventually be a big issue in terms of backing up through the system in the future. So it was important that we explored moving that waste pipe. And the way it would be is the wall that basically backs on from the bathroom to the kitchen. By moving the waste, we could have it that it served the benefit of both the shower room and the kitchen. So there was just multiple factors that said that was the right thing to do. The only complication with it would be that it's a concrete floor. So, there's these added costs of having to dig that up. But all these things considered, putting in new electric panel heaters. There's some of the rooms, like I said at the beginning of the episode, there was no radiators in some of the rooms. So to give every room, a radiator, upgrade the electrics, because all the light fittings, everything has to be upgraded in here to serve the purpose of a residential property. So all the electrics are being upgraded, full, brand new flooring throughout, fully redecorated, brand new shower room, kitchen. Windows are okay, but the external doors need tidied up. There was a step at the back door that also needed to be repaired, and then probably tiled over, and then just the kind of finishing touches, all new light fittings, etc. throughout the house. So it will look immaculate once it's been fully refurbished. And like I said, there's massive demand for these kind of properties in the north of Scotland. One bedroom bungalows, one bedroom cottages, that kind of market. So Yeah, certainly this looks to be a very good project, but given that we had to factor in these extra costs for the waste pipe and things, and also the building warrant and potential architects costs for the conversion, we factored in a refurb budget of about 20 grand. Originally they were hoping for about 16, 17, but a few £1,000s extra just to cover these extra costs. So the total acquisition costs, including the refurbishment, we're looking at £45,800. So let's take a look at some of the key strategies as to how we can actually make money from this deal. So if we look at the total acquisition costs, all factors taken into consideration, it's 45,800 based on comparable sales. Now there isn't very many comparables, certainly for end terrace cottages. However, looking at the size of the property and exploring what comparables were in the area, there was actually a fair amount to support an end value of about £60,000. That's a relatively conservative value, but I feel it's fair compared to what's around in the area. When you're looking at the property next door as a 4-bedroom mid-terrace, having an end value of at least 150 grand, you would definitely pay £60,000 for this kind of property in that location. So, there's definitely support at that type of level. So basing it off of that number, we'll be looking at buy-to-let as a potential exit strategy. Now, on that basis, following the same format as we did in episode 1, a standard buy-to-let mortgage at say 75% loan to value would allow us to extract £45,000 at the point of refinance. The rental value, the same again, basing it on what you're almost guaranteed. The easiest way to do that is simply to have a look at the local housing association rate, which is the LHA rate, which is basically what the local council would pay in terms of a DSS tenant. In which case it works out as just under about £99 per week, which over the course of the year is roughly about £425 per month. So we'll base it on that, but looking at private rental comps, you're comfortably probably looking at more 450, 475. But to keep consistency across these episodes, I'm going to work with the same the same LHA rate. So looking at it, 425 in terms of your rental income. The monthly costs we have to factor in will be your management fee, typically about 10% of the rental income. The insurance costs, I explained this before, depends on situation and who you use. Road Group at the moment is probably paying anywhere between sort of £7 to £12 per property. I think we're on about £7 now, but for a kind of average limited company individual unit, you can certainly get a broker that will be able to give you a quote around about £20 per property. The interest on the loan, the £45,000 loan that we would take out at the point of refinance, commercial rates, like I said, there's variable rates depending on who you go with and what the product is that they're offering. But standard commercial for owning a limited company, not a personal name, but a limited company, is about 4.5%. So I'll just continue to use these examples when exploring these opportunities. So the interest on the loan would be about £168.75 every single month. Now, looking at it then from a broad overview, if you were to use buy-to-let as your exit strategy, the total amount of capital left in the deal would be £800. So it's cost us 45,800. At the point of refinance, we'll get 45 grand of that back. And then after your rental income comes in at 425 per month, deducting all of those costs that we covered, your positive monthly cash flow is sitting somewhere in the region of about £193.75. Now, there are some variable costs, certainly that's before any maintenance or voids or anything like that, but just as a broad overview to look at what the potential outcomes of this strategy on this property would look like. You're basically looking at having all your money back within about 4 or 5 months and having an infinite return on asset thereafter. So buy-to-let certainly looks like a key strategy that could be implemented here. Now, if you're not about long-term infinite returning assets and you simply just want to get in, get out and move on to the next one, another viable opportunity to make money from this one would be the buy to flip strategy. So looking at it, same total costs, all the acquisitions plus the refurbs plus all the legal costs, all the sourcing fees, etc. We're looking at 45,800 on the way in. The end value, based on a lot of support and evidence justifying an end value of £60,000, deducting the sales costs, estate agency fees, legal fees, home report costs, we're looking at a potential profit pre-tax of just over £11,500. So you certainly can see that this strategy would also be viable. It mainly comes down to what your appetite is. Ourselves at Rood Group, buy to let is definitely the way forward. We can't see why you wouldn't want to recycle the cash, add more units and continue to grow, constantly building up on that monthly cash flow. But we are very biased towards buy to let. But certainly a lot of my clients implement other strategies such as buy to flip. Now, one strategy that I won't really go into detail on in this one because it's not something that I personally do or ever have done, but it's becoming more popular and you could see a potential demand for a property like this, which would be a holiday let. Now, there's differences when you come to refinancing, and given that it's not something I'm experienced in, I won't really comment on it today. I prefer to only speak about things that we've actually done or continue to do. So, but the demand could be there. Looking at other properties listed on Airbnb or certainly other holiday let websites, you could be comfortably looking at least sort of £75 to £100 per night on a one-bedroom cottage up in this area. So depending on the occupancy rate, you could end up increasing the cash flow quite significantly on this opportunity if you didn't want to put a standard tenant. But from what I do know on that kind of strategy is, obviously the void periods are much higher, maintenance costs tend to be a lot higher, your management costs can be like 30% and upwards because of the turnover and the cleaning costs. Every time somebody leaves, you need to get the property ready again to let back out. So yeah, it's a potential exit again, but like I said, in terms of the dynamics of how to put that together, I'm not experienced enough to make comment on it, but I like to just give the clients an idea that, look, these are the two main things that I know are exits for you for definite, but there's other options to explore and you could certainly make this asset perform a lot better. So overall, the Moss Street one, the clients are delighted with the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to see the outcome on it. The figures certainly look solid. If you combine the two, if you look at the flip figures on both the house and this one, you're looking at over 60 grand in terms of potential profit pre-tax. Or if you did the buy to let, you're pulling out, I think, based on last week's numbers, and even at leaving £800 in this deal, you're still coming out with about 15 grand in profit at the point of refinance and generating about £400 positive cash flow every month. That's some solid figures, and these are the type of deals that we would buy all day long. So I appreciate you watching again. If you've got any feedback, certainly leave a comment below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. There'll be a lot more content coming out, and certainly follow us on all the social media platforms, both myself personally, which you'll see at Conar Tracy, or you can get us on Rood Group across Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. So yeah, just let me know your thoughts, and if anybody's got any questions, certainly reach out directly. I'll be more than happy to answer. Cheers guys.